Welcome back to another episode of New Teacher Talk, where we discuss the most common challenges that early career educators experience and find answers, whether you are in a rural, suburban, or urban setting. In this episode, we are going to talk about a topic that many early career educators think about: continuing to learn and grow as a professional, specifically the value of graduate school, as well as the benefits of more certifications and endorsements. But before we introduce our special guest today, let us do some quick introductions of our own. I'm Dr. Beth, one of the co-founders of this podcast channel. My background in education includes being a high school band director, teacher, educator, and mentor.
And I'm Dr. Anna, an early childhood generalist who mentors educators on their journey toward national board certification. Dr. Beth and I are excited to have a special guest joining us today on this episode, Hannah Curran. She is the first Master in Elementary Mathematics graduate offered by the New Jersey Center for Teaching and Learning. Hannah has a background in special education and recently expanded her career by adding a middle school mathematics endorsement. While she currently teaches special ed at her alma mater, Pompton High School, her true passion is working with middle school students. Hannah was apprehensive about committing to a master's program, but those doubts quickly vanished as she immersed herself in the learning process. One of the biggest takeaways for Hannah in committing to a master's program was the idea that true learning should be measured by how well you understand the content, not how fast you learn it. Welcome, Hannah.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Would you tell us a little bit about yourself that we didn't share during our introduction?
Yeah, you hit on so much already, but I am an early career educator myself. I've had the unique opportunity of venturing in all different paths, whether that be starting off as a general education teacher in an urban setting, teaching social studies, to now returning back to where I went to high school as a special education teacher who is currently teaching science, not where I expected my career to go 5 years ago when I graduated undergrad. But I've explored a lot of opportunities and am excited to see where I continue to grow.
You know, Hannah, what we hear from our listeners all the time is that they really enjoy hearing from early career educators like yourself. And here you're already talking about how your path is taking you in directions that you had never considered originally, and that you really find a value as you move forward in your profession. We're curious to know, because you are the first graduate of that special master's program through the NJCTL, what led you to pursue your degree in mathematics from the New Jersey Center?
So currently in New Jersey, and I'm pretty sure this is a nationwide issue, there's definitely a teacher shortage in those specific areas of math, science, and special ed. And those were areas where I was a little insecure growing up when it came to math and science. I wasn't a bad student, but I was hesitant to dive in when I was picking my undergrad choice just because of a comfort level. And with the shortage, I found myself being placed in inclusion classes, acting as the special education teacher in the math and science setting because of how hard it has been to find those teachers. And slowly I started to convince myself I can definitely do this. And I'm not sure why I was so hesitant in the past about doing it. So at that point, being in my mid-20s, it was, I can do this, but how am I going to do this now? Because life can be complex. You know, being young, everyone thinks you have all this free time. No, there's a lot going on all the time. So I was researching, coming up with ways that I could piece together credits, and I came across NJCTL. I had asked a few people at the school I was in at the time about it, and someone told me they had heard of it, and they heard great things. So I figured, why not give it a try? And now I'm going back to NJCTL to get my science endorsement just because of how accommodating the program was, but also how much I learned. I truly walked away feeling like the expert in everything they taught me.
That is a ringing endorsement for the New Jersey Center for Teaching and Learning. The practicality, the availability. Here, you've already completed your work in math, and now you're moving on to science.
And especially as a special educator, it's so important that you have that understanding, a grasp of the content that you are trying to share with students who have been struggling in that content area. And by having that level of confidence yourself, it just makes your work easier and I'm sure more gratifying.
100%. I actually have convinced a colleague now to also go to NJCTL because they recently added special ed.
That's excellent. Has this degree deepened your teaching practice? Could you share an example or two about how your practice has changed?
100%. So there were two main takeaways for me when I was going through the coursework. Like I touched upon earlier, I was definitely a little bit insecure with my own self before diving in. And my takeaway was it's not about the speed, it's more about mastering content. And that's what the program did for me. I could go back and rewatch modules to ensure I really knew them. And now I do that in my own class. So my kids who are struggling with the concept, when the test comes, they can go back and rewatch that as many times as they need. I post all of my materials on our class resource page so they can always go back to it and they can come see me and say, hey, you talked about this topic. I'm a little lost. And then we might have a conversation of there was an assignment tied to that. You've sat back down with me. We've reviewed it. You're feeling more comfortable. Let's retake it. Because yes, the scores in the gradebook are important, but if that student took the time to master that content, I'm not going to hold that old grade to them. They took the time to truly master it and understand it. And across all content areas, all curriculums, we see how curriculums build on each other. So if the student's taking the time now, it's only going to benefit them later when that becomes the prior knowledge that they need. So that was one of the main takeaways. The other one is polling and getting that constant assessment from my students. I was not a fan. My undergraduate work, I left saying I will never give a test. I'm huge on project-based learning, and I still am very big on project-based learning, but I've now left with the concept of polling and those multiple choice questions tied in throughout a lesson to see, can you tell me if it's A, B, or C on the fly? Allows me to reflect and see if I need to go back and touch on something before we continue on. So those are the two big takeaways for me, and I think my students really would say it helps them 100% and it allows them to find success day in and day out in my classroom.
It seems like the attitude too that you bring to them, that you don't have to learn it quickly, that it's about the effort that you put into the work that you're doing, how you are going to be able to grasp that material. And you give them that sense that I will stick with you. I am here for you. And I will support that learning no matter how long it takes. That's so important to students to understand that the teacher is really there on their side.
Yeah, I think coming out of the pandemic, there was this big push for social emotional learning, and that is my take on it. I'm still touching on the curriculum content, but I'm also here for you along the way to make sure you have this.
Yes.
You know, Hannah, one of the reasons why we were so excited to have you as our special guest is because early career teachers, like you experienced, you've encouraged your peers to consider going back to school and getting their degree or certification or endorsement. Different terminology is used depending on what state you're working in. Let's talk about earning your degree. So, what kind of impact has earning your degree made on your students?
So I think when it comes to earning this degree, it's allowed me to really adapt and be a flexible and accommodating educator. The experiences that I had and the hesitations I had when I was enrolling in NJCTL was, am I going to have the time to do this? Am I going to actually understand? And like I mentioned earlier, that's what I now bring to my students. They have a lot going on in their own lives and they have these extracurriculars they're involved in after school. When our bell rings for the end of the day, they want to go and do those things. And I understand that because when I go home for the day, I want to go and do the things I want to do. So this master's program not only has helped me continue to accommodate and be flexible with my students, but it's also changed my whole perception on the approach I take with them. A big thing with NJCTL was hands-on activities in a virtual setting. I joined education as a teacher right as we went into lockdown in New Jersey. I wish I had this, 4 years ago with me, but these online labs in math, I didn't know math could be fun before this. But there was all these different activities where you were using online manipulatives to engage with your students in my learning, and now I've brought that to my students as well.
It makes me want to go back and learn more about math too.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And now she's going on and going to be working on her science degree. Very exciting, Hannah.
So, Hannah, I know that we have a lot of early career educators that listen to this podcast, and they might have questions for you about your program. How can our listeners reach out to you with more questions?
Currently, I'm online at LinkedIn. You can add me there. I have an Instagram page that I just got up and running again. I took a break for a bit to focus on me and what I needed at the time, but I'm back online at MSHCURRAN. That's on Instagram. If you need to connect with me that way, quick DM. I'm pretty responsive.
Thank you, Hannah, for being our guest today.
Be sure to follow us on our socials. Each week, we share a helpful resource that you can download through our Instagram page at New Teacher Talk. For example, look for the Tuesday teacher resource. Also, check out our Thursday thought to keep you motivated. In addition to following us on our socials, we also hope you will become a regular follower of this podcast channel. So hit that follow button so you don't miss an episode. And remember, as a new teacher or an aspiring new teacher, we are here to support you.